what it has meant for me to do whatever it takes to end up in Uganda helping refugees, being in kind of an extreme location, has been all about needing to trust God in deeper ways, bigger ways than I ever had before. It's meant having to let go of a lot of things that were very important to me, behaviors, um, attitudes, uh, things, people, the ways I relate with people, letting go of a lot of things. And it's required trusting. Thing is, though, that I've actually had a lot of struggle talking about this week. It's been a few days now since Amy emailed and asked me to share something. Because I've not been able to answer it properly. I've struggled with it a lot. I've had some big cry sessions. I've had some times of just being kind of angry and frustrated. I've had other times of just, being in awe and wonder of who God is and how I have ended up here and how amazing it is. So it's just been kind of a jumble of things because I realize how much I am not the person to be talking about doing whatever it takes to follow God. Okay, I don't in any way see myself as qualified to talk about that. Simply because I know my life and I know the journey that it's taken to get here. You see, in order to really understand it, I have to go back because 5 years ago, this very weekend, God had actually shown me, Jenny, it's time to pursue this thing of going to Africa. I had known about it before, hadn't really talked to people about it, but I knew. And he was saying, it's now time for you to let me do some things in you, inside of you. Let me heal you a little bit deeper. Let me help you to change some things, to grow up in some areas. Let's begin that process right now because I want you to start this thing of physically going over to Africa and seeing what's up. And had some really powerful God times with that, really powerful things. And there were some specific areas to let go of. There were relationships that needed to change, a handful of relationships, and the ways I related to people. There were some dreams, things that I had always wanted, that I just had to let go of. I loved being where I was, and the ministry that I was doing at that time, I just was awesome, and I loved it. So all these things had to be released, and God was challenging me to do that, and I was agreeing. At that time, 5 years ago, I was like, yes, God, I'll do it, I'll do whatever it takes. Literally, I think I said that. But I wasn't really changing my actions. I wasn't really following through with things God said because when it came down to it, I wasn't ready. And I was scared, and I liked the comforts I had. I liked the life that I had. And I was confused. I had confusion in a couple of different areas in life and things with some situations and things going on. And instead of trusting God with the confusion, I just allowed myself to stay confused and continue to try to figure it out myself. And anyway, but knowing what is right to do and not doing it, according to Scripture, is sin. So as I was not doing these things that God wanted me to do, I was opening up sin in my life. And when you open it up on that level, you're going to open up to all kinds of things. And so that's what happened. Because 4 years ago, this very weekend, I think that's one of the reasons this has been so hard to think about, I had actually hit the lowest point in my life. There was then sin in my life that was even beyond this not trusting God thing. There were choices that I had made that were wrong and hurtful and not of God. And it ended up that a lot of people were hurt. There was brokenness. There were consequences. And there was a ripple effect to things that had gone on in my life at that time. And I ended up being depressed. I ended up really struggling for a long time, more than people even realize, because of this turning away from God and not trusting Him and then making choices that were not good. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart to have done that to God. It broke my heart to see how it affected other people and the hurt that was there. It broke my heart to see purposes and things that were supposed to happen in certain areas never come to pass. because of choices that were made that were not of God. All these things broke my heart. I saw the bad fruit of not following through with doing whatever it took to be living the way that God's directing us to live, to get off our chairs and do something, to respond not only in our actions externally, but in our healing internally. So I saw that. But in the midst of, and you'll just have to take my word for it, what a rough time it was, and how far I would have imagined ever being from doing something like coming to Athens. But here's the thing about God, because His love knows no bounds. Romans 8 talks about how high and wide and deep, that nothing separates us from God's love. Because God doesn't want to see me in the place of being apart from Him. God doesn't want to see me in the place of not living my purpose. God doesn't want to see me be lazy or stuck in my comfort or stuck in sin or confused or depressed or any of these things or arrogant. God doesn't want to see us in those places. So He's going to do whatever it takes to get us out of it if we choose to let Him, if we choose to respond. So in the midst of really, really dark times for me, the one thing that was for sure was God saying, Jenny, go to Africa. If you're really serious about wanting me, because in the midst of my problems, I did want God. I did want to do His best. That was one of my big problems, was just how broken I was over not doing God's best. And so, because I loved Him and I knew He loved me, but there was a disconnect there. And so it was just like He was saying, really, Jenny, I love you. If you really are serious, do this. Just go. Don't worry about what you're doing or anything. Just go. So I did. In 2006, I went. In 2007, I came again. And at that point, I knew it's where I was supposed to be. That the original thing about coming here and living here and seeing big purposes of hope and change for people, new life beginning for people who are really struggling, all of those things, God had renewed that. I didn't feel ready. I was still really having a hard time in my life. I was scared, very scared over a lot of different things. I don't know. It's so many issues. But when I talked it over with somebody, the advice that was given to me was, Jenny, but if you know it's God, you might as well just put a stake in the ground and say you're going to go, or else you may never. And I knew that was true. And I knew somewhere within me, it was hard to receive because I was under condemnation, but it was somewhere I knew God loved me that much that He wanted to see, and God loved other people that much that He wanted to see His purposes lived out. And so I'm going to go. And I knew I didn't want to make the same mistakes again. I had learned the last time what it meant to go back. So I said, I'm going. And throughout the course of that year, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. I felt like an idiot because I didn't have any plan, and people like to know plans. I didn't have money, and people like to know there's money. I didn't have a place to live. Hopped on the plane with no place to live. Came here, gave up my home on the res in Arizona that I loved, said goodbye to people, gave away pretty much everything I own, all this kind of stuff, and off I came. Radical things. But I have to tell you that those physical radical things were not as radical as the stuff that needed to happen in my life, that I was afraid to do before, that I was finally trying to do now. And so here I am, a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, and seeing what God's doing. And you all know, you get the updates to see the incredible stuff that's going on here. It blows me away. And those are the purposes of God. And that's what He wants to do in you. If we give Him the chance, if we trust Him, if we get up and just do something, God's going to do amazing things beyond anything we could imagine. And it'll work out somehow and be okay. So on this Resurrection Day, I just encourage you, no matter where you're at in your life, to let God do these things. Let God work it out. Let God change you. And respond. Because it's okay. And it's worth it. And there's life.